This is Dan Abbott. I'm making this video to show the students in AEDD 105, CAD Graphics, Southern Maine Community College, how to approach the second assignment in the class. Download that and open it, and this is what we're making. A nice simple part, but don't be fooled. I want you to use the specific tools built into AutoCAD to make sure that what you're drawing is precise and accurate. And I want you to do this as many times as necessary to develop an understanding of how those tools work. I'm going to move this off my screen. You might want to have it open while you're watching this video. So now we're in AutoCAD. I'm going to start a new drawing. I need some layers to begin with. Since our last drawing required you to set up layers for one of your projects, I'm going to go to Design Center and pull the layers out of that last drawing to use here. To do that, I'm going to start by opening a drawing file. This is the first drawing that you did. Required you to set up a number of layers. Now that this drawing is open, I'm going to go to Design Center. First, I'm going back to the drawing in which I want the layers. This drawing I just started has one layer, layer 0. Go to Design Center. I'll open up the drawing that has the layers in it. Highlight all those layers. Make sure you get all of them. Right click, add layers. Now I've got the layers that I need added to this, and I'm going to start by going to the visible layer. You're going to start this drawing. I'm just going to pick a starting point of 0, 0. Using a line command or the P-line command. L for line. Starting point 0, 0. I can type in as an absolute coordinate. I'm going to go down until I have polar tracking. Go 4 inches. I'll zoom in using my mouse. 2.5 is the height of this. Now I'm going to go over and acquire the endpoint of the first line by hovering over it. When I get the two tracking lines, I'm going to left click, type C for close, and it's going to go back to the beginning. This is something I drew with lines. If I were to use P lines, I'm going to hover over that corner, go over 2 inches so that the spacing between the two views is 2 inches. Go over 2.25, go up until it's level with the top, go to the left by 0.5, go straight down by 2. I'm going to come over until it lines up with the beginning. C for close. In this case, I have a closed P line. If I turn line weights on, because I'm on the visible layer, these lines are thick. I'm going to turn them off for right now. I'll go back to the line command, highlight the top corner, move up, type in a 2, go over and acquire the opposite corner, left click, go up 2.25, go over and acquire the beginning point, left click, type C for close. Now I'm going to start adding some other lines. The line across the front, that lines right up with that corner. I'm going to hover over the corner, come across till I get an intersection. You notice I'm not getting an intersection because I don't have it turned on in my object snaps. If I go to the object snap dialog box, intersection is right there. It is turned on, so that's not the problem. But sometimes by just looking at your object snaps and coming back out, problems in AutoCAD will go away. Let's find out if that's true. Highlight corner, and it's true. Intersection, left click, intersection. Now I have those two lines. Just to get it off the user coordinate system, I think I'll move this whole drawing. So instead of being at 0, 0, let's go to 2, 2. It's a little easier to see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to draw a miter line. The miter line is going to start at the intersection of this line and this line. I can do that at one of two ways. I can highlight both of those corners and get two tracking points that I've acquired. Left click and start at their intersection, and then go up at 45 degrees. Right now 45 degrees doesn't show up because in my polar tracking settings I have it set to 90. If I set it to 45, now that tracking line will show up, and I'm using this simply as a miter line so that I can project this corner up to the miter line. When it gets to the miter line, I'll go across, indicate that that line goes right there. I then use a trim command and then trim this line out like so. The other thing I could do is the same thing, where I'm going to acquire this point, but now I'm going to shift right click and go to temporary tracking. I'm going to track up temporarily until I hit that intersection, left click, but that doesn't start drawing a line. I'm just tracking across till I get this intersection. When I get that, I can come across to here, and now I have a line that's placed in the right location. Now we're going to draw a circle. I'll place a circle at the midpoint of this line. The only reason midpoint is showing up is because I have midpoint sent as a running object snap. You can see it right there. Go back to the circle command, snap to that midpoint. It's got a radius of 1. Now I'm going to use the trim command. The trim command tells me to select cutting edges. I'm going to pick that circle and that line, both of them as cutting edges. When I'm done selecting, I'm going to right click. Now I'm getting a new prompt, select object to trim. I'm going to pick this and this, which I can do by picking them individually or by dragging a crossing window through. Now I've got that shape. I'm going to use the fillet command now. Fillet command by default has a radius set to 0. In order for it to do anything other than create a sharp corner, we need to go first to the radius option. I'm going to set that radius for 0.5. Pick those two lines. Enter brings me back in the command. Pick those two lines. Now I've got the corners rounded. I'm going to draw a circle now, projecting off the midpoint of the front. Go up 1. D for diameter. 1 is the diameter of the circle. That line's drawn in. I'm going to draw a line that projects off of the corner of the top view from that intersection to that intersection. Enter brings back my command. I hover over the corner, left click, left click. Now I've got all of my object lines drawn. I'm going to change to the hidden line layer. Don't forget, if you forget to do this, you can always go back and change it later. I'll draw a line. I'm going to have the line go from the quadrant of that circle. Once again, I have that quadrant because I turned on the quadrant object snap. Drag it across, intersection to intersection, enter, enter, quadrant, drag it across, intersection to intersection. Now I find it really nice if I can just press the right button and automatically have it enter, instead of pressing the right button and having it come up with a menu. So it'd be really nice if I could just right click and get something other than repeat command. So I'm going to go to the options command, and under user preferences I'm going to change right click customization so that I've turned on time sensitive right click. Time sensitive right click allows me to do this. I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to hover over here, go up, left click, right click cancels, right click repeats. I go back here, go back to the line command itself, hover over the diamond, go up, left click, right click quickly, gets me out of the command. A slow right click brings up the menu. A quick right click is like pressing enter. I want to project from the midpoint of this arc. I want to project over and then down to draw the hidden line here. I could have just drawn the hidden line over 1, but I'll try the temporary tracking once again. Shift right click temporary track point, track off this temporarily, come over to the intersection, left click, go down, intersection, intersection. Now that gives me a line that's 1 inch back from the back of the arc. Again, since I know it's 1 inch, I could have just drawn a line by acquiring that endpoint, go over 1 and then go straight down to here. Now I'm going to put some center lines on here, but I'm actually going to wait until I'm doing my dimensioning before putting the center lines in place. So right now I'm just going to delete my miter line. If I check my line weights, they all look pretty good. Turn them back off again. Now what I want to do is go to a layout. So down at the bottom I have model and layout 1. I'm going to go to layout 1. Right now it has a sheet of paper for A size. I'm just going to get a sense of how much room I need. I'm going to take my viewport, I'm going to drag it out a little bit. I'm going to get a title block in just a minute. The whole purpose of this is for me to say, what would it look like at a 1-to-1 scale? And I look at it and think, I don't think I'll have enough room for the title block I have, so I need a larger sheet of paper. To use a larger sheet of paper, I need to change the page setup. Page setup is acquired, or is, you'll get the page setup by going to Layout 1, right-clicking on the tab, and selecting Page Setup Manager. For the purposes of this class, we don't need to change that from anything else. It can just be layout 1. But just so you know, it is possible to rename layouts. And I'm going to call this one B-size since that's a sheet of paper I plan to use. Now when I right click and go to Page Setup Manager, B-size is the name of the page setup. I'm going to modify this. First I'm going to select a plotter. Hi folks, Dan Abbott. I am making an addendum video for the rod support video that is on my YouTube channel and that is linked to the Brightspace. Because with Brightspace and COVID, we are no longer in our lab, so the location of one of the files is different and the plotter you're going to use is different. So what we're looking at right here is the drawing of the rod support. It's got the object lines, everything is set up, and now we're in a layout. What I want you to do in this layout is this. Right click on the layout tab in the lower left hand corner, go up to Page Setup Manager, and modify that layout. We're going to modify it in two ways. First, you're going to change the plotter to DWG to PDF. There are a couple other possible PDF things as well, and I think other instructors like some of the other ones better for different reasons, but this one will work. Then we're going to select a B-size sheet of paper, so we're going to go to ANSI Full Bleed B 17 by 11 inches. Come up here to modify the plot style table, so we're going to pick monochrome. Now when we're done doing that, we have a larger sheet of paper. Now this is the difference in what you have to do as far as getting the next thing, the title block. You have to type the insert command. Now I've discovered that in the current release of AutoCAD, when I type insert, I get an error message now. Worked for a while, now it doesn't. That's the new AutoCAD insert palette. There is an alternative, which is DD, stands for Display Dialog Box, insert. And when you use that command instead, you'll get an old-fashioned dialog box instead of a palette that allow you to use this. I'm going to go and browse, and what you need to do is find a title block. Now these title blocks are in a link that I sent to everyone, and that link goes to a Google Drive, and in that Google Drive there are a number of folders. If I go to that Google Drive, what it'll look like to you when you get here is this, where there's a folder for every one of the classes, including ours. There's also a folder called Title Blocks. If you open that Title Blocks folder, and for this drawing go into the mechanical title blocks, use the TB inch zone. This is drawing that was done in inches. Now you're going to bring that in. I'm just going to drop it in place. And when it comes in, it's going to ask you a couple of questions because there's a couple of things called attributes. So it allows you to put the title in here. And then it allows you to put your name in there as well. When you pick OK, title block comes in. Now we're going to go and set this up so that it's going to plot correctly, and then you're going to add dimensions to it. I'm going to move this viewport. Goes up here. Now I'm going to make it big enough so it fills just the area of the title block in which I can place things. Notice the title block is off center just a little bit. I'm going to take everything including my viewport, go to the move command. Move command of course can be found up here in the ribbon right there. You can also type M. I'm just going to take and move this by eye so it looks a little better, so it's more or less centered on the sheet of paper. I'm going to put that viewport on a layer called VP. And the layer called VP is a layer that I created, and when I created it, it's right there, I picked this little button right there that says no plot, and that comes under the plot column. So if I come down here to VP, you notice I've got a number of other layers that are also frozen. Not frozen, but no plot. Now what I need to do is to make this viewport something that represents the object at a specific scale. In other words, I don't want it to look like this, and I don't want it to look like that. I want it to look like this more or less, but I have to use a specific scale. So you go down to the bottom of the screen. At the bottom of the screen there are a number of things in the status bar, and one of them is the scale of the selected viewport. Right now it's 0.8, which means it's about 80% of the actual size. If you select the arrow, go up 1 to 1, that means we can plot this, the actual size of the object. So the drawing is exactly the same size as the object. Once you've done that, go back to 1 to 1, and then off to the left, 2 little ticks, is an open padlock. Select it, it's now a closed padlock, so now you can't change that. Now you can go back to the other video, and this is the part of the video that is no longer correct, only because we're not in the lab at school. So it's going to have you, in fact, I think in that video I have you add the hidden lines and add the center lines. And now, after you've brought that in, on model space, this looks like that. In the layout tab, it looks like this. Hard to see the line weights unless you zoom in, but the line weights are being shown. And then you're going to go to the dimension mode, and if you type D, it'll bring up the dimension style dialog box, and in the video it tells you which one of these to select before you start adding your dimensions, and it shows you how to add the dimensions. And this one now, I might try splicing it into the other video if I have a chance. Otherwise, while you're watching the other video and you get to the point where it's asking you to get a title block, you're going to have to flip over to this one to find out where that is. Before doing anything else, I'm going to insert a title block. I is the alias for insert, and it'll bring up the new AutoCAD insert layer. Let me just delete. I'm going to get rid of those things under the recent. I'm going to go remove those. I'm going to go to the three little dots here, and I'm going to look for a title block, which is on the R drive, under the title blocks folder, under the mechanical folder. And the one I'm looking for is TB inch zone. I'm going to open that up. It puts it in the recent. I'm going to clear the insertion point so it goes to 0, 0. Redefine it. It comes in. Looks like that. Now we're going to add some dimensions. First I need to double click and make that viewport active. Then we're going to go up here. If I go to the Annotate tab of the ribbon, I have more choices here, including things like center marks and center lines. I'm not going to have you use center mark and center line. Those were two elements that were added to AutoCAD fairly recently. I have problems with the way both of them are implemented. So instead what I'm going to have you do is the old AutoCAD Center tool. To use that tool, go to the command line and type D for dimension, CE for center, and it'll allow you to put a center mark on the drawing. Now I want you, before you do this, to change from paper space to model space, because I want all the dimensions and other annotation related directly to the geometry to be placed in model space. So I'm in model space now. Type DCE. I'm going to go down and pick. One more thing though. Let me go back to home. I'm currently on the hidden layer. I want to go to the center layer. Now DCE. I'll select that arc. And that is not what I want. I need to make one change to the dimension style. I'm going to go and change that now, but I'm also going to save that change so that when you open up this title block, you'll have it. So what I'm doing is going to modify under Mechanical Imperial. Under Symbols and Arrows, I'm going to indicate that I want a line drawn with the center mark. So now I'll erase the center mark that was created. I'll go to Dim Center once again. That's what I want to see. And that's what I want to see. Now here's why I don't like the center mark tool that AutoCAD has created. I don't want that line coming down, so I'm going to delete it. The center line tool creates a center mark as a center mark tool as a single entity. You can't delete that line. You can just get rid of all of them. I also want a gap. If you do this, the object line is the one that should stand out. Center lines cannot go on top of an object line. We want a little bit of a gap there. I'm going to grip edit this by grabbing this grip, moving to the left, and I'm going to move the end point 1/8 of an inch, which will give me a 1/16 of an inch gap. Come over here and do the same thing, 0.125. Now I've got the gap I want there, and I've gotten rid of one extension line. The rest of that we can leave the same. Now I'm going to take these three lines that were created with the dim center command. I'm going to copy them. The copy command is CO. I'm going to put a window around here, and if you'll notice I'm going left to right, not right to left. And I'm making a very skinny window because I only want to include inside that window the three vertical lines. Left click, right click, and I've selected it. Now I want to copy from that point right there. Do that one more time. I want to copy from that point right there, and I want to go straight down, but I also want to line it up so that it is aligned with the midpoint of that line. I'll zoom out, zoom back in. I'm going to do the same thing up here, where I want to track up and over so it looks like that. Then I'm going to come to the vertical one. That was a mistake I made earlier. I'm going to come to the vertical one. I'll go back in the copy command. Once again, I'm going to use a little skinny window. Go from the center. So it lines up here like that. Now if I put the line weights on so I can see what's going on, that drawing has all the geometry that it needs. Now I'm going to add some dimensions. In order to do that, I'll go to my dimension layer. Once I get to the dimension layer, I can start adding dimensions. Now this tool will put different kinds of dimensions on, sort of knows what to do, sort of, but not always. So I'm going to actually go to linear, radial, and diameter to do this. So I use a linear dimension. I'm going to go from here to the end point of that crosshair, and I'm going to hover over this corner and then go straight down and type 3.375, so I've got about a 3/8 of an inch space right here. Now there's another tool that we can get up here that's not listed in the drop down. It's called dim baseline. In order to use that, I'm going to type DBA, and what happens is it starts a dimension from the same point as the last dimension that I created, same base point. So all you have to do is pick one thing, and now it puts that automatically at the right distance away. So that first dimension should be 3/8 to a half an inch. This next dimension should be a quarter or so. The main thing is you want more space between the object and the first dimension than you have between the other dimensions. Now I'm going to go back up to linear. This time I can take radial. The radial dimension is going to go in here. If you try to bring it out here, you'll discover a glitch in AutoCAD that's been there for multiple releases, where dimension in this format has to get pulled all the way out here in order to get it to look like you'd like it to look. But you can't go where I'd want to put it, which is right here. But this is perfectly acceptable as well on either side, and I can put that dimension right here. Do another radial dimension here and pull it off. And I realize that I want to make a change in my dimension style, and I will do that before you insert this. I don't want that leading 0. I'm going to modify under primary units and suppress leading zeros so that it gets rid of it like that. Now I'm going to do a diameter dimension. This one's going to be right about here. Now I'm going to do another linear dimension. Here's a case where I'm going to actually delete that line because I want a linear dimension. And it goes from the end point of the crosshair to that point right there, and then comes out 0.375. I go to the end point of the crosshair because the way I've got the dimension style set up, you get the crosshair with the gap automatically. Come back over to the other side. We'll do another linear dimension from here to here. We'll go over here, 0.375, DBA for dimension baseline. Grab that point. Do another linear dimension, which could be DLI, or I could pick it from the top. Go from here to here. I want that to be about 3/8 of an inch as well. Once again, if I go dim baseline, I have to just pick the one point, and then I have that dimension. That's all the dimensions you want on this. I am going to go out and I want to put the viewport on its own layer. Right now it's on the hidden layer. If I go to layer properties, under layer properties, I do not have a viewports layer. So I'm going to make a viewports layer called viewports. And when I do that, I'm going to change the color to yellow because I like yellow for the viewports because it doesn't show up, but I can still see the viewport itself. And I'm going to make it non-plot, which is that little icon right there. Come back out, take the viewport edge, drop it on the viewports layer. It turns yellow, but if I do a preview right now, the viewport edge itself doesn't show up. Now I need to put some text in here. Material you can leave alone. Over here under interpret geometry. By the way, I went back to paper space. I'm in model space. I'm back in paper space so that I can do something with this title block, which I inserted into paper space. I'm going to just put a line right through. By the way, I'm going to put a line that goes through here, but if I get too close down here, the line command starts over here at that end point. So here's a case where I don't want an object snap. So I can shift right click and go to none. Now no matter what, I'm not using an object snap, and I'm just going to draw a line through this because that's not the standard that I'm using. Material we'll just leave since you don't know what the material is. The title for this I'll place using a style, and the style I want you to use is going to be called Romanesque, based on the Romanesque font. We'll set it current. If you'd prefer to use Arial, I'll accept that. You can set that current if you want. Romanesque meets all standards. Arial mostly meets all standards. So now I'm going to use the text commands, but not multi-text. I'm going to use single line text. Pick a point to start. My text height in the title should be 0.25, 0.2 to 0.25. Rotation angle 0. Uppercase, only in the title block. Rod support. Looks like that. Get out of the text command. I'm going to go back in the text command. I type DT for dtext, but you can also just get it right here. Now I'm going to do a number of things that are the same height. So I'll do this. Put in the date, whatever today's date is. I think it's the 9th, 2019. Go down to the scale, 1 to 1. Go over here to drawn by, D.Abbott, checked by, whoever checked it. Instructor in this case is the same. Course 105-01, and this is sheet 1 of 1. Drawing number, we'll let you leave that off for right now. Now you come down, everything is here, the text is where you want it, everything else looks good. Then do a preview. Preview will show you how it's going to plot. If when you zoom in, the line weights look good, if all the information is there, if the text spacing looks right, you have everything on the right layers, all the right line types. Now you can go ahead and turn it in. When you turn it in, just save it in this form from the B-size layout and put it in your put it in your grade folder on the S drive. When you're all done, go ahead and plot it. Plot it to the TGGS. It says it's plotting in the background, and it'll come out in the plotter that's in the plotter area, and that is the smaller of the three plotters, the smallest of the three plotters. So that's the review of what I covered today in class for that assignment. Let me know if you have any questions.